how are you energetically different from everybody else? Right. So a lot of systems we have talk about how we have similarities to other people. We categorize, we group down, we look at where we're the same as other people. Human design goes in the opposite direction and says, let's look at all of the ways that you're different and give you some language around that so that you feel a sense of permission, and that permission allows a space of healing, which is why I really, really love it.
Welcome back to another episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual. I'm your host, Teresa. Well, if you guys don't know by now, I love every single guest that comes on who speaks about mind, body, spirit aspects around the spiritual part of who you are. But my guest today is special because I've not had this subject come on this whole last 3.5 years I've been doing my podcast. So I am pleased to welcome Holly Maree, a manifester. So welcome, Holly.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to
So
be here.
I would love you to share, being that you're the first guest that's had this subject and this passion on about what you do, is who you are and what do you do, Holly?
Well, my name is Holly. Obviously, if you didn't guess from the accent, I'm Australian. So based on the other side of the world, I largely operate in a broad sense in the field of energetics. So I've been in the online space for about 5 years now. I came from a long business history before this. I've been a business owner for about 15 years, but I used to be in hospitality and events, owning businesses through there. And 5 years ago, I moved online, and really it was for me through my spiritual awakening. And I wanted to have a space where I could share, at least to the people who were a couple of steps behind me. My theory for a long time was whatever is 2 steps back, that's what I can teach. That's what I can bring people. So like most people in the online space, I've had a lot of evolutions through that business journey, a lot of different niches and topics and areas, but they've always been amongst the energetics and business space. These days, for nearly 3 years now, I have been a human design teacher. So the human design system is an incredible system of understanding energetics with a personalized blueprint. I also focus a lot on gene keys. I integrate that deeply into human design because they work so beautifully in harmony with each other. And I run a community specifically for manifestors, which is one of the energy types out of human design. So we're a rare energy type. We're only 9% of the population. So it's a quirky little community that I've got going on. And I specialize in teaching all things about manifestors and business and energetics to manifestors.
Wow. So tell me, how many different types of human design styles are there?
Yeah, we have human design is a very layered system, right? I like to call it an onion. The technical textbook term for human design is that it's called the science of differentiation. So essentially all that means is, how are you energetically different from everybody else, right? So a lot of systems we have talk about how we have similarities to other people. We categorize, we group down, we look at where we're the same as other people. Human design goes in the opposite direction and says, let's look at all of the ways that you're different and give you some language around that so that you feel a sense of permission, and that permission allows a space of healing, which is why I really, really love it. And on that surface layer, the very outside layer of the onion, which is probably the only slightly more generalized part of human design, we have 5 different energy types. So we have our generators. They are at about 37% of the population, so the most dominant group. And our generators we call them sacral beings, right? They love to respond. They love to be creative. They get very satisfied by doing things. Generally, they're the builders. Anything that has ever been built or sustained or mastered has been done by a generator. And when they're in alignment, they are sunshine. They're so vibrant and they're so happy, and they can light up a whole room. They're beautiful people to be around. Then we have our manifesting generators as the next group, and our manifesting generators are about 33% of the population, and they're a hybrid between a generator and a manifestor, hence manifesting generator. So they're kind of like generators on steroids, right? They're the people who can build, can sustain, can master, but they're also really innovative, very independent. They're the people in society who can genuinely multitask. And they're doing many things at once. They're bouncing around and they thrive in that environment. So we see a lot of celebrities, artists, politicians, business owners are manifesting generators because they can kind of do it all, right? They're again, when in alignment, they're beautiful hurricanes and they can do things very quickly. Then we have our projectors, which is what you are, which is super exciting. I love projectors. Projectors are at about 20% of the population, and they're non-sacral beings. They're the first of the non-sacrals. So they don't have that responsiveness, right? They're much energetically kind of quieter, slower, needing a lot more rest. The projectors have this ability to penetrate things. So they see detail, they see complexity, they see, the projectors are the people in your life that will say, I see what your problem is and I see how to solve it. And I want to guide you through that whole process. I want to be here to teach you to do that. So we see a ton of projectors in the online space in coaching, which is beautiful. We see a lot of projectors in the education sphere as well as teachers and educators. So beautiful. Barack Obama is a projector, right? So we can see some really cool examples of them in places like government as well. But projectors they have this way of kind of just taking stock of everything and helping you to understand it, which we absolutely need. They are really probably the leaders of society if we boil it down. Then we have manifestors, which is my energy type. So we're at 9% of the population. Manifestors are kind of different to everybody else. So we are also non-sacral, so we're tired and we need to rest a lot. We can't respond heaps. But we have a closed energy where everybody else has some kind of open energy. A manifestor has a closed energy. So we operate in this role of really being visionaries. We have what we call creative urges. So we will bring just these crazy ideas, these crazy concepts, these things that have never been done before, never been seen, never been created. We bring them from that 5D, non-conceptual place, and we birth them into reality. We make them. And then once that process is done, we're done. We don't want to sustain it. We don't want to keep building it. We don't want to hang around for it. We just want to kind of birth it, drop it, and then we're disconnected and we go into long periods of rest. So manifestors tend to be the most misunderstood people because people can't get a clear read on our energy. We call it repelling or magnetizing. So they either really magnetize people, really, really inspire people, or people get very threatened by that lack of predictability, by that inability to automatically read you, and they'll veer away and kind of naturally hate a manifestor without any understanding of why they're hating them. They just get very triggered. So we have some really cool manifestors to look at as examples. Adele is a great manifestor, really beautiful. And you'll see that, Adele comes out once every 5 years and creates this epic album of her work and releases it and inspires people and it goes crazy. And then she disappears again and she's gone, right? We also have, curiously, at the moment in the Russia-Ukraine situation, both Putin and so both sides of politics are actually manifestors. So we've got these kind of two manifestors going head to head. But one of them, obviously, the Ukrainian government is led by this energy that is very altruistic, right? It's about power to the people. It's this visionary bringing all the people together. But then on the Russian side, we have this force for destruction that wants to divide and separate. So manifestors can go either way, right? And we've got some curious ones through history. And then our fifth group are the reflectors, who are at 1%. So they're kind of our unicorns. If you have a reflector in your life, it's an exceptional gift to have them around. They have completely open energy, completely open. And what they do is reflect. They mirror. So a reflector is a person that you can be around and you feel like you are really witnessed and really held, because they're taking all of your energy and they're processing it at this very deep, very spiritual level. And then they just reflect it back to you gently, and it gives you the opportunity to see yourself. So we have some really, really gorgeous gifts that are brought to society by reflectors, but they need to be looked after. They very much need to be nurtured and protected.
So what got you involved in this?
Oh, like most people in human design, it kind of
Hmm.
found me. It's a bit of a quirky system where a lot of people try to run away from it, and it just chases you. So I I knew many people. Correct. This will be in your life. I had a number of people that I knew in the business space and in my personal space that were into human design, and I was very against it. I didn't want another system. I don't necessarily buy into the idea of having to label yourself. I think we get trapped in that in the spiritual world. It can be, I identify myself by being a life path, whatever, or a this or that. So at first, I really didn't want human design at all, and was then involved in a mastermind with a beautiful human design person. It's just another participant in the mastermind. Her name is Eden Carpenter. She's a phenomenal human design teacher. And I did a retreat in LA back in 2020 and stayed in an Airbnb with Eden. And she really just dumped human design all over me for days and days and days. And I had a super conscious moment where I said, okay, I've been resisting this for about 18 months. If you're going to keep bringing this at me, if this is energetically going to keep coming back into my space, then hands up. I surrender. Whatever it is, I'm here. I will go down the rabbit hole. I'm available. And when I re-entered back into Australia after that retreat, we went straight into lockdown for COVID. So that gave me the opportunity to actually pull down my whole business. I'd been a spiritual business coach up until that point. Pulled down my whole business. I certified in human design and gene keys and a number of other tools. And at the end of 2020, rebuilt my business out as a human design community specifically for manifestors, which at the time was the first of its kind that hadn't been done in human design before. Of course, manifestor, doing the thing that has never been done. And now I don't really remember what life was like without viewing it all through the lens of human design. Now it's a very normal language.
Well, it's interesting because I've had my chart. I did my chart many years ago, and then of course I've done gene keys, some of gene keys, but I haven't really got into the human design too much. And it's interesting that, like I said at the beginning, I've had a lot of people kind of flow through, healers doing the same type of things, tapping or breath work, but not many. I haven't had anyone come through with human design. So it's very unique. It's very specialized, I'm assuming. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a complex system. It's what we call a hybrid system. So it's actually built off this convergence of a number of different languages that we already have. So on this spiritual side, we have astrology, Kabbalah, the I Ching, the chakra system, and then on this almost more scientific kind of black and white semi-masculine side, we actually have biomechanics and epigenetics. We look at a lot of environmental factors. It's a lot of physiology. So there's a lot of different perspectives with which you can look at human design. And the beautiful thing about that is that people will study it in all different ways and represent it in all different ways. And we have such a flood of projectors coming into human design over the last couple of years, of course, right? Because projectors are so good at seeing that complexity and taking a part out of that and then guiding that into something new. But the system itself was created back in the 1980s and was taught by a man called Ra Uruhu. He was a manifester as well. His real name was Alan Krakenow. He renamed himself Ra Uruhu. Very manifester thing to do. And he taught human design up until the early 2000s when he passed away, and kind of just had a small cohort of people that lived with him in Ibiza, and he taught and taught and taught. And some of those people are still around teaching human design. I don't think it became all that mainstream until probably 2019, 2020. Really, it was this lineup of the pandemic and human design taking this kind of center stage position in a lot of the like personal development, spirituality spaces. So it's a system and a phrase that is far more known now, but I really do feel for the people that have been in it, since the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s, because it was very left of center for a long time.
And that's not that long ago.
No,
Not like
no, not at
100
all.
years
Not at
ago or,
all.
2,000 years ago. That's really recent.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's probably the newest system of energetics that is around, as far as I know anyway.
And I think it's interesting too, Holly, how you went to you've created this manifestor community, a podcast, like you're on it for the manifestors, which is really exciting because that's your niche. Like I read your bio where it said how you were like, I'm just doing mine, I'm doing manifestors. And you really had to give up a lot of your clientele because they weren't that. So how challenging was that when you went
Yeah,
through that?
absolutely. Oh, crazy. Absolutely crazy. And for me as a person who has come from that business history, and brick and mortar business, which is where I had been for a long time, is so different. I mean, it's just a different business concept altogether, but it's very A plus B equals C. You have a product, you know the people to sell it to, you make it available to sell. Ta-da! There you go. You make money. And coming into the online space, those first couple of years in the online space, I mean, I was wandering the wilderness like
Yeah.
everybody is, right? There's no rule book in the online business game, and there are billions of people that you could potentially be talking to, and there are millions of voices already speaking to those people. So it's a challenging arena to be in, and I'd already built my way up to a six-figure business as a coach, which was a challenge to do. And when that feeling initially came to me of, this is successful, but it's not actually aligned. It's again one of those situations, much like my previous businesses had been, of this is successful on the outside, but I'm not feeling any of that success. I don't like it. I don't enjoy doing this. I don't feel satisfied or peaceful or any of those things I want to be feeling. So I made the decision to pull it all down, having no idea where that was going to take anything. I really had no concept of where I was going to rebuild it, when I was going to rebuild it, what that was going to look like. So that was about 8 months that I sat just pretty much dwindling down all of the capital in my business, just keeping a couple of my staff ticking over, making some social media content. That was it. I had no clients, no programs, no nothing. And when I came back out at the end of 2020 and really felt, okay, I'm just going to specialize now in 9% of the population, that was completely illogical. And there were actually some people that left my team because of that, because it doesn't make sense to do that. And it's really starting from scratch. And I was very much sort of retrenching 91% of my existing audience in the hope that the people that remained were going to be the ones that would understand my message. But it very quickly took off, very, very quickly took off and became a really beautiful place of healing. So I think it's always that experience in spiritual growth, in, healing your own wounds, in narrating your own way through a different pathway, just as a human, that we're terrified of the risk. We're terrified of the unknown. And yet the more trusting you can be of that, the greater the expansion is on the other side.
Yeah, it's so empowering too to hear you talk about that and say how you really trusted in what you weren't really passionate about or weren't really feeling in your heart. And now you are. And like you said, gangbusters, it blew up. And, like manifestors are finding you, manifestors are working with you. And I noticed on your website, you've got manifestors that are also doing these readings that are around the world. So it's beautiful, Holly. So what about
Thank
someone
you.
that's
Thank
not a
you. Yeah, I
manifestor?
certify.
What do we do if we're not like, I know oh,
Where
you'll
do
go
you
somewhere
go?
else.
How do you get
You
help?
projectors over there, you reflectors over there. What? Holly, help.
I mean, the cool thing is we now have a lot of voices in human design, which is great. And amongst my favorites are probably Day Luna, Erin Claire Jones, Karen Curry Parker. Karen Curry actually studied with Ra Uruhu. She was one of those original students of his. So she's got some really great insight. She's been working with the system for, 30 years at this point. But I think what's really beautiful for me is now seeing that we we have this kind of pop-up of all of these beautiful communities for specific types, which didn't used to be a thing until we did it over here for manifestors. So for projectors, we've got the projector movement or projectors invited. For our generators and manifesting generators, we have pure generators, an exceptional community. For reflectors, there are a couple of communities. My favorite one is HD undefined though. So I think that there's somewhere to go for everyone, and that has its own healing to it, is that we're now finding places of belonging with each other.
I like that. And so these are, I mean, like I just went online and I found a website, put in my information, which is my birthday, where I live, where I was at the time, all the things you do for astrology. And then up came, my chart. So is that where you would suggest people go to find out what they are first?
Yeah. Absolutely. You are going to need your birth information, just like you would for an astrology natal chart reading. That is specific to the minute of your birth. Your chart can change from minute to minute, so you definitely do need to know your birth time and not just an approximate, like, oh, I was born at 8 a.m.-ish. No, make sure you get your birth time, because there are plenty of people who come into human design and for 3 years think that they're a generator, only to discover that in fact they're a projector. Whoops. So you probably
right?
need to get that information nailed. Right. And then there are several chart generating tools now. So my favorite is Genetic Matrix. You can also go to Jovian Archive, mybodygraph.com. You can just go to Google, type in human design, and you will find it. There's now a plethora of information out there available and several free chart generating
And
tools.
if you're a manifester, we know where to go, right? Your community, Holly.
Hopefully. You're welcome. I mean, part of the experience of being a manifester is that we hate being told what to do. So I would never ever tell a manifester that they have to come and be part of the manifester community. But if you desire to, the doors are open. You're welcome.
There's a lot of opportunity there, right? There's a lot of people to share with, and it's so beautiful. So in leaving this podcast, Holly, I'd love for you to give some insights as far as, like what someone could really embrace in finding out more about the human design for themselves. What is, something that really stands out that you go, this is why I would guide someone to do this?
I think for me, coming into human design wasn't necessarily about understanding myself anymore. I was already very engrossed in that personal development space and had a lot of tools, had a lot of languages, had a lot of systems. And I think that that's true of a number of people coming into human design, is that self-awareness is not the goal necessarily. For some people it is, and it's an amazing system for that alone. But for those who are already self-aware and kind of wondering, why would I even bother? why add another thing into this when I'm already on that journey already? What human design offers you is this space of getting that clarity of, this is what is me and this is what is not me. And that's been the most pivotal part of studying human design and being a student of human design myself, is seeing all of these aspects of myself and my behavior that really are conditioning. They're parts of me that I've taken on from expectations from other people, from wounded relationships, from childhood trauma, from being a non-sacral person in a very sacral world. And the journey has been about allowing all of those parts to die off, to go away. And what that allows me to do, and a lot of other people in human design to do, is to then just shine more fully as yourself. When you're not carrying that baggage, it's not about how do I become a better version of me, and more about how can I release all of these things that are not allowing me to be me. And that's when I step into a space of alignment. That's when I step into a space of empowerment and, personal power and ownership and expression and all those beautiful things. And ultimately that's really where success comes from. That's the end result. So it's expansive. That's a very, very expansive way, I find, of doing that self journey
And bringing forth that authenticity.
Absolutely.
And and I also like the word discernment. So what I hear you saying is there's a lot of discernment of what's me, what's not me, and how can I really work and walk in this world the way I need to as a projector.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what we find in a lot of those more outward facing systems, so even when we're looking at things like astrology, perhaps, or, Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or a lot of these other tools, we're saying, here's your list of qualities. This is who you are, and you need to step up to that. You need to embody that. Ideally, if you're going to be the best version of you, this is who you are. And I love that human design really goes in the complete opposite direction. And it says, when I'm not going to give you a list of things that you're meant to be, I'm going to give you this language that reflects largely who you are in a very unique, personalized expression, because nobody is going to be exactly the same as you. I can meet another manifestor with an identical design to me, and they're not going to be the same as me because we have too many life factors involved in that. But what are then all of the ways that I'm experiencing life that are sort of detracting from that are taking away from that? And then can I heal those? Can I release myself into more freedom? So I think there's a lot of support of self in the human design system, very, very similar to gene keys, very similar. So Richard Rudd trained with Ra Uru. He created the gene keys system based off the human design system. So they're very complementary. And if you've ever studied gene keys, it's that same space. It's the same, I'm going to contemplate these very intricate energies within myself and try to get a scope of understanding of how am I showing up in that way, and maybe how am I not showing up in that way, and what space does that give me for expansion?
So with the complexity of human design, is there like a book? Like, the Gene Keys has a book. Or is it too complex
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
that someone should go to someone, actually have a reading and figure it out that way versus getting a book?
I think that there are so many access points to human design now. I mean, 20 years ago, you probably just had to get a reading. That would have been the only way to get in. But no, now we have several books on human design. There's Quantum Human Design, the Definitive Book of Human Design. There's so many great juicy ones. There are readers, millions of readers all over the world. The readers that I certify and I teach, they're all manifestors, and they all specialize in manifestors, but they also teach the whole human design system. And there are so many. You could go anywhere and you can find a reader in human design, which is great. But really, we're also at the point in human design where you can just Google it, and you're going to find blog articles and podcasts and social media accounts. A lot of people teaching the fundamental basics of human design. A lot of people also teaching these kind of niched, curated, very specific areas of human design. So wherever you want to enter in at, there's plenty available. And if you've never, ever heard of human design before this, the best thing you can do is just Google it and start that rabbit hole. It will take you to exactly the place that you need to
Awesome.
go.
I love it, Holly. Well, I thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with my listeners, because like I said, you're the first one that's come on. It's been so wonderful. And I know it's a little challenging with our internets and the winds here and things going on, but it's been so much fun, Holly. And I really wish you the most success, which you already have, with your business and being the amazing manifestor you are. Thank you so much for coming on. Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in again to another episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual, and I hope that you received some insights around human design and maybe have some insights as far as finding out what type you are, and maybe even connecting with Holly if you are a manifester, because I think she's got it going on down under. So, and a big thanks to her for coming on today and sharing all of her beautiful wisdom and insights around human design. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you have not subscribed yet, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. Also hit the like button, and please leave me a comment if you like this episode or another one you recently watched. Also, please feel free to share this podcast with your friends and family or anyone you know that might enjoy so many morsels of spiritual truths that are coming out with different people like Holly today and other of my amazing guests that come on. And until next week, please remember that life is too short to not be enthusiastic about your unique journey.